Welcome to Editors on Editing. It is my great pleasure to speak with William Goldenberg tonight. Billy has cut some of the most seminal films in the last 20 years, including Heat, Seabiscuit, The Insider, and National Treasure. This year he is nominated for both the Eddie and the Academy Award for Best Editing for both Argo and Zero Dark 30. Thank you very much for being here tonight.
Thanks for having me.
You've had an amazing year. I mean, to be nominated for 2 films in 1 year. I think it's only been the 3rd time or the 4th time that that's ever happened in history.
Walter Murch and Michael Kahn were the other two. So.
Well, your mentor, Michael Kahn. And this year he's also nominated for Lincoln. It must be quite an honor to be nominated with him.
Actually, the day of the nominations, I saw him, and he was thrilled for me, incredibly proud, and which made me really happy. There was no competition between us.
I mean,
we're just both happy to be. It's like a dream come true for me to be. He's obviously been my editing idol, so to be nominated the same year is exciting. I assisted him. The first movie was Always, and I assisted him for about 3 years, and then when we did Alive, that Frank Marshall directed, the deal was that he was going to put the movie in the first cut, and during the course of the first cutting, he gave me a lot of scenes to work on, and then when we completed the first cut, he left to do Jurassic Park, and Frank was nice enough to allow me to move up and be the solo editor at that point. My first screen credit.
A lot of the films you've cut have been real-life dramas.
If I could always do movies like that, that'd be a dream. But you try and mix it up so that you explore other genres, so that you're never pigeonholed as one type of editor. Well, he only does those dramas, so you can't hire him for a comedy or an action movie. Mm-hmm. I tried in my career to be a good choice for any movie.
This is the second time you've worked with Ben Affleck. In the first film, he was just the director, but in this one he's the star. Did that pose any special challenges?
The only thing I try to do is be careful politically in the cutting room, because you're talking about the guy sitting next to you. Mm-hmm. And so you just want to be careful not to be critical in a way that would hurt somebody's feelings. But luckily, Ben's pretty consistent, and he did a really great job, and he was very true to the performance, which was true to Tony Mendez. And so I just tried to treat it like any other actor, really.
It seems like he's very generous with the other actors.
He was careful with every single performance. But we did, at times, do it like a check and make sure, because Tony Mendez is our lead character, and there were times where we went back and adjusted scenes to make sure that the scene was more from his point of view than maybe we had in the beginning, and it really helped center the movie. We would just go through and say how much, maybe this moment should be played through Tony's eyes. Maybe we need a little more reaction to him, and less of somebody else, or a less important character.
Do you ever feel like a huge responsibility to these real life people, like with Maya and Zero Dark 30, or?
I felt a huge responsibility on both movies. I met Tony. I didn't meet Tony until after the movie was finished, and I never met any of the Real House guests either. But it didn't mean that I felt any less responsibility. All these people are still alive, and we wanted to make sure that we were respectful to them and told the story as truthfully as we could and real as we could. And maybe even more so with Zero Dark 30, and I actually never met Maya or any of the other people involved. But because of the subject being so fresh in people's minds, I thought about it every day on both movies, really being careful to be as truthful as possible and as true to these people and as respectful to them, and and even the people that were on the other side, consider our enemies. I just wanted to be respectful to all those people, not make the Iranians,
to vilify them.
Yeah, not to make the Iranians into cartoon villains, and not to make the Amar and Zero Dark 30, the guy who gets tortured in the beginning, to try and show a human side of him as well, and all the kids in the compound and the women, and we just wanted to make sure that these people were three-dimensional characters and not just, the bad guys in black hats,
And that's good for the audience, because then they really buy into the trueness of these films.
Whether they're good guys or bad guys, if we feel us characters have a certain humanity, I think it really, you latch on to things better, you latch on to characters and story better that way.
The opening of Argo, I thought, was really fascinating, because you had these cartoon-like storyboards, and then that's intercut with this very stark stock footage.
It wasn't in the original script, but Ben always had that opening in mind. First of all, introducing thematically the idea of the storyboards, which play a huge part in our story, and also introduce the idea that this movie is really ultimately about storytelling. It's about, the stories you tell your children, what the government tells its citizens, what the CIA is telling the house guests, the story of pretending that they're really involved in a movie when they're not. So there's a lot of levels of storytelling, and I think it was a way of subtly introducing that idea. So you understand that, this wasn't just a screaming mob. These were people with a point of view, and they have a reason for being there, and they feel like they've been oppressed and been manipulated by the U.S. and British government. They are there angry for a reason, not just because they're bad people.
You intercut that with some Super 8 footage.
In the original screenplay, we were going to use stock footage from the actual embassy takeover. In the script, it describes being on the stock footage and then coming around 180 degrees and coming to 35 millimeter live action and seeing from the other side of the wall. It was a very big moment in the script. But what Ben did and Rodrigo Prieto, the DP, did, they were in the crowd with Super 8 cameras that are on screen. It was more visceral and immediate, and felt more like you were more in the moment to use our 8mm than to use stock footage. If you're in the story, you're with the characters, that it doesn't matter. Generally, because we were montaging what was happening around the world or what was happening in the U.S., it just inherently worked, and it worked in the script, and then it really just worked in the film.
But it doesn't always go together so seamlessly.
Some of it was written that way, like in the script read-through, where they read it through the screenplay. It's intercut with what's happening with the hostages in the U.S. Embassy, and intercut with our house guests and some newsreel footage. Some of that was in the script, and then as I went through, I found pieces that worked really well as juxtapositions, whether just audio or visual, and it just seemed to lend itself to it.
The whole movie walks this fine line between a lighter tone with the Hollywood angle and then this very dramatic stuff that's happening. You had crazy people reading the Hollywood script, and then you were cutting to these hostages being gathered up to maybe be executed.
It's sort of a microcosm of the movie, and I think that Ben and I think Chris Terrio felt that if this scene works, then the idea of combining all these tones will work in the movie. At least I felt that way, that it was really, like you say, the silliness of these characters dressed up in these sort of fake Star Wars outfits, intercut with a mock execution, is a fairly bold thing to do. And I think that I felt like if we could make the audience be laughing and then be on the edge of their seat, be laughing one moment, on the edge of their seat the next, and then maybe being emotional, or not crying, but maybe getting close to that with this gentleman on the ground, the hooded guy on the ground crying at the end of the mock execution. If we could make that scene work within a 3 or 4 minute span, then I felt like that the movie itself, the idea of the movie would work. It's one of the things, it's one of my favorite scenes that I've ever put together, actually.
How do you keep a scene clear when there's so much frenetic editing going on?
I think a lot of this it really comes down to feel, and your experience as an editor. There was much more story being told in the first cut. It's a matter of feeling it out. And when have you been away for something too long? When is something not clear? How much do you need to add to that to make it clear? So for me, it's a lot of, I cut the screenplay and see how it looks, see if it's working, and then attack the areas I don't think are working and try and make them better and experiment with less or more. And in this case, a lot of times it was less, and we felt like the more immediate it was and sort of cascading, that it felt scarier and putting the audience in the place of, of these people that are involved in it. There's no formula. It's just, for me, it's hard work and trial and error.
But sometimes you might know the story almost better than the audience, and you might assume that they might get certain things.
I think that's always a difficulty with editing, you have to be able, it's the hardest thing to learn, I think, and I think it comes with experience, being able to take yourself and be objective about something that you've been watching for 6 months and feel like you're a first-time viewer when you're, it's the 50th time. Whether it's taking the movie into a screening room, having other people in the room that don't know the movie, and not that you ask them questions, you can just feel it.
In that early scene where they're at the State Department trying to figure out what they're going to do with the escapees, you intercut Super 8 footage of each of the characters. You get a sense of who these people are in a very economical, short short way, and I was wondering if it was shot for that.
I sort of assumed that it was shot for that, but I wasn't sure, so I asked Ben, and he said, well, maybe for that, and maybe just for something else. He didn't really, I think he just thought it was a good idea to have. So I tried it there, almost like you were cutting to their home movies, and it seemed to work really well. It seemed a way to instead of holding on their pictures, it seemed to be, what I was trying to do with it is use the pieces that really personalize each character, and it made it look like they were enjoying their lives, so that you see what was being taken away from them.
One scene that I felt was extremely effective was that van scene where they come up to the demonstration.
What I tried to do there was, have the exterior shots in sharp contrast to the interior shots, and sonically, the sound of being inside that van and the pounding is so much different than being wide and hearing the sort of jeering mob.
Absolutely.
So the sound recorders did a great job of having microphones all over the place. So we augmented it obviously with sound effects and Foley, but a lot of the original first cut of it sounded really scary because of the great recordings they had. I tried to use pieces that would feel like oppressive and feel like they were trapped in this metal box and there was no way out.
That. In both this movie and Zero Dark 30, there's so many characters. How do you know how much time to spend with each character?
With Zero Dark 30, it was a matter of staying with Maya and cutting Maya's story and what's happening with her, because we knew there were so many names and so many places that there's no way the audience is going to follow every single one.
Absolutely.
So we just wanted to make sure that we stuck with our character and that people, the audience could hang on to her. And it seemed to work, that that people understood what was important because it was important to her, and what was coming from her was what they needed to pay attention to. And some of that again is just instinct about how much or how little, because we never screened Zero Dark 30 for audiences. The most we ever screened it for were 5 or 6 people.
Wow.
So there was no big preview where we had a focus group saying, I didn't get that or I didn't get this. We all just use our own instincts.
How long was the first cut?
About 3 hours, and I think 3.5 hours, 3:40 maybe.
Mm-hmm.
So it was fair. I mean, we took an hour out of it. Or over an hour out of it. Some of it felt like pretty easy, and some of it just takes time. And you think, how am I ever going to get another 20 minutes out? And then 3 weeks later, you have 10 of them out because you see a thing over and over, and things start to become clear to you about what's too long or what needs to be trimmed out completely. It was shot on an Alexa camera. It's digital, so it's about 320 hours of dailies, wow, which comes out to about 1,800,000 feet of film if it were film. There was a tremendous amount of film on the raid. There's 40 hours of dailies, but a very precise 40 hours. I mean, there's a lot of choices, but you're going from here to here, and you sort of know the events, and it's just trying to make them clear and exciting. I talked to Mark Bowl, obviously was going to be the centerpiece of the movie, and they wanted to know that how long will it take to make it great? And I jokingly said, I don't know, a couple of days. And I don't think he thought it was funny. Some of the sections, for instance, checking the courier's phone number from his mother's phone number, and then he gets his cell phone and hunting him down. Just a small section of it, I had to watch dailies for 3 days to get to view all the dailies and take notes.
Like a very complicated sequence.
It was very unwieldy, and as proud as I am of the raid, I'm maybe more proud of that because of it could have gone in a million different bad directions. I think the raid was sort of mine to fuck up in a way.
Another visceral scene for me was the helicopter crash. I felt like I was inside that helicopter. It felt very chaotic.
A lot of those are completely CG, and it wasn't the original plan. But we wanted it to look as real and feel as visceral as possible. So we went, Image Engine, the company that did the visual effects, was able to mock up some stuff for us, and we all went over these camera angles together. We literally sat there with a model of the compound, the one that's in the movie, and the same one that I think their government used. And we sat there with these model helicopters and an iPad with a camera, and we looked and made up camera angles in the cutting room. And so we sort of redesigned the sequence in post, and then we just kept working on it and noodling around with it until we got it to feel right.
On the raid, I felt like I was a member of SEAL Team 6.
Yeah, it was a challenge. I just tried to make it as visceral as possible, and using that objective vision in combination with the night vision material, it sort of reveal, okay, we're moving all into darkness, and then reveal what the SEALs can see. And I think that was a way we were able to throw people into their head, that you were able to see what they were seeing through their eyes. And I think, you felt like you were observing something, and then you were inside of it. And I think that really helped to put you on the ground with the SEALs.
In Argo, I noticed that there were some really amazing transitions, like when the chief of staff says, "Who authorized this?" and then you cut to Ben saying, "You." And also when Cranston hits the glass, and then you see the close-up of the glass ball spinning.
Those were actually mostly found in the cutting room. Like when he spins the ball and you go to the record player turning.
Mm-hmm. That's another one.
Yeah, those were actually, because that where he says "you," that scene was moved, so that we found that wasn't the original place for that scene. So those are all found in the cutting room, actually.
And it's so nice because it ties these different characters together.
Yeah, you want to make them tie together as you flow, but you also don't want to make it where they go, "Look at that, that's cheesy because you just did that." Like you don't want to make it obvious. You want to try and make it organic to the story. So you're always, weighing whether you've gone too far or not. But that was a lot of stuff we discovered in the cutting room together.
The end credits was very effective with the juxtaposition of the real photo and the photo that Ben shot.
In the casting, he was paying attention to people that looked like the real people. I mean, some look more like them than others. Mm-hmm. But I think at a certain point, Ben decided, I just want people who are real actors, who are real as actors, and that can improv. He was very much into improving a lot of their stuff, and a lot of the, discussions and things. And we were only using bits of them here and there, but a lot of it was improv to have a feeling of reality.
That must have been tricky to cut.
There were people talking on top of each other, so when it came time to cutting it, intercutting performances was very difficult because, and luckily for me, our sound mixer had individual mics on everybody, so I was able to dig things out that normally I would have been in big trouble, because then we'd have to do ADR to finish words because they were getting cut off by another actor.
And there's so many actors in those scenes, so.
Yeah, and a lot of the takes were different. Every take was different because they were improving a lot of it.
So did you have to stick with one take sometimes, or were
No, I never got into a spot where I never let myself be pigeonholed like that. I did what I thought was best, and found a way to make it work, whether it was stealing 2 letters from a word to make another word end in the right way or something like that. But a lot of times the mics were clean enough and that I didn't have to worry about it. So
it's great because it really feels like you're there with those characters.
I mean, the idea was that the movie wouldn't feel like, oh, this is a period movie. We tried to make it, this is a movie that was shot in that period, and we just held it for 20 or 30 years. That we wanted it to feel like those 70s films.
The opening of Zero Dark 30 I find really interesting, because instead of showing the stock footage from 9/11, you only show the audio clips.
That's in the script that way, starting in black with just the title, September 11th. It didn't have the specific pieces that were chosen, but yeah, I mean, I don't think any more images of 9/11 need to be shown. And I know a lot of people get very emotional watching it, and we did in the cutting room, and it was something I didn't actually edit that. Dylan did with some help from a couple of the assistants, but it was a thing I know where he would work on it and then he would have to put it away for a while, because it's, and I think that I'll see that movie in 15 years and feel the same have the same emotional response that I did the first time I saw it.
Jessica Chastain's performance is amazing. What was it like crafting it?
I mean, it was a gift, because she's amazing. And there's sometimes you're crafting a performance and making a performance, and sometimes you're just trying to get out of their way and just use the very best of the best, because she was good in everything. I mean, she was incredibly committed as an actress, and she's incredibly gifted. And it takes a special actress, a highly intelligent actress, to be able to pull that off and make you believe it and make you feel like they're understanding what they're saying, and it gave Maya's character a three-dimensionality, a lot of stuff that wasn't even in the script. There's no backstory of hers, but you feel the backstory, you feel her life through Jessica's performance, and it's a credit to her. I mean, you try and just get out of the way and not mess it up.
You spent a lot of time leading up to the suicide bombing. How did you know how much tension the audience could take?
It was a question of how much to give away, and it was what the music should be doing, and how much we should show, and whether we should, his name was Balawi, the doctor that eventually blows himself up, how much of him to show. There was a lot of footage of him in the car, and we decided to really stay away from, and to show the car and some interiors.
It makes it more mysterious.
Yeah, it made it feel foreboding and uncomfortable, but hopefully the audience doesn't really know why they're, you know, it's, and because you want to give them enough to feel the foreboding, but not give it away.
And then you cut to the door opening on Maya, and it really made me jump.
Yeah, that was just brilliantly done, you know, and that's the real door sounded from the set. I mean, it's, you know, Dylan made this cut. It was she types in, she's in the IM thing, call me when you can, and then after the explosion, you cut to that.
An explosion, I think, is quiet, right?
It's not super loud, but it has this really cool, Paul Otteson, our sound designer, did this kind of slap that he, you know, off the buildings, the surrounding metal buildings, and it just, you know, it was a way to differentiate the explosion, and I think it made it feel more tragic somehow. I mean, he's just a really gifted sound designer. He came up with this.
Because it wasn't so bombastic, when the door opens, that becomes the...
That becomes the you know, again, throwing it back to Maya, because it being her story, you know, and that's sort of the explosion that takes place in her mind.
This was your first time working with Catherine Bigelow. How did that come about?
It became clear to them at some point, a month from the end of shooting, that they needed somebody to help, and they reached out to me. And luckily I was finishing Argo, and that's how these two movies happened in the same year. As we finished Argo in June, and the movie didn't come out till October. So luckily for me, that happened, and I was available to do 2 movies in a year. I think I had a 15-minute conversation with her on the phone. She was in Jordan. They were shooting The Raid at the time. The first day I met her was my first day on the job. Talked to her for a little while about this and that and some general feelings, and then I had a lot of film to view, so I just went and locked myself in my room and plowed through it 14 hours a day, 6 days a week for a month.
Wow.
To put that together the first time, yeah. When Catherine hires you to be a key person on her crew, whether it's the DP or your sound designer or your editor, I mean, she really relies on you. It's like, and when she trusts you, it's like, you're the editor, you're going to cut the movie.
That's fantastic.
And Ben's similar. I mean, he get a lot of creative freedom. With Catherine, she really relies on you. She's not in there nitpicking. She's telling you, she's making general comments. She's, you know, and there's certain things she feels more strongly about than others, but she really relies on you to be cutting the movie, which is great. And which isn't to say she doesn't pay attention to every detail. She does.
Absolutely, I'm sure.
But I referred to her as, you know, she's quietly brilliant, because she'll say very few things, but when she does, you'll say, okay, let's try that. And somehow magically you do the right thing, and you look back and look at that suggestion and go, wow, that was incredibly brilliant and a game changer, and you didn't even realize it. You feel like you're part of the process. You feel like it's a partnership, and that's just the best possible, you know, scenario for an editor.
That's excellent. Thank you so very much for this opportunity. I really appreciate it.
Oh, my pleasure, and thanks for taking the time to talk to me.